speed of work, get more done, unlock more time, more money, and more freedom.
Join us as we explore the challenges and power of making work visible. Welcome to the Visible Workplace Podcast with Dr. Tom Raleigh.
Now, let's get into today's episode.
Welcome to today's episode of Visible Workplace. My name is Dr. Tom Raleigh and excited to have you here today. We are going to be discussing an interesting problem. It's a very 21st century problem. It's one that we are dealing with constantly. It is the topic of disruption. How do we get back to work? And you're probably aware of this, you're probably dealing with it in your own life, and you're definitely dealing with it with people that you interact with. That we are now living in a continual soup of distraction, largely driven by these wonderful devices that live in our pockets called the cell phone or the mobile phone, if you're here in Australia, and their unbelievable ability to distract us away from the work that we're doing into whatever is going on the phone. Now, there's definitely solutions to this, and you may well have implemented these already. Things like turning off notification, things like going into airplane mode, things like ignoring and saying, you know what, I'm just going to let that go through to the keeper and not answer that phone call, not take that action that's being demanded of me immediately, and instead continuing to work on what I'm doing. But this is a difficult skill. This is not common. And the consequence and the problem of this continual distraction is that it takes a long time to get back to work. Estimated, I believe it's around 6 minutes. 6 minutes to go from interruption or disruption through to returning to the work that I was doing. Now, one of the curious things that has struck me is that the interruptions and disruptions are happening more frequently than 6 minutes, and therefore, am I ever getting the work done? And this could show up like, wow, I felt like I've been so busy and yet I didn't get much done. Why is that? Well, that is because if the interruptions and disruptions happen all the time and happen more frequently than an average of 6 minutes, and it takes 6 minutes to get back, we are in a problem. Now, definitely there is a first piece here, which is how do I stop the disruptions? As we've previously discussed on the podcast, one of the peculiar steps that I took was turning off my email, getting rid of the app. Now, have I still checked email on my phone? Yes, I have, but it is much slower and I really have to work to do it. And so it's got to be worth it. And if it's not worth it, if it's not something that I really need to check right now, the fact that there's not this app there is proving very beneficial. One of my buddies, Todd Smith out of Surreal, he tried and he's like, thank you. Thank you for sharing this peculiar and relatively uncommon idea of getting rid of the email off the phone. Now, does it mean that I've got rid of email entirely? No. But when I'm dealing with email, I'm choosing to do it in front of my laptop with a keyboard, with a mouse, being able to process a lot more emails very quickly. I wake up in the morning, I go through my morning routine, I eventually hit email. I'm like, wow, there is 28 emails here. Select and archive or select and delete. And I'm just choosing the particular ones. Now, this is not so good for the marketers that are coming after me. Why? Because they want that disruption. They want that interruption. They want the headline to capture my attention, get me away from what I'm doing and get me into their world. Hey, have you got this problem? I do. Okay. And I'm beginning to spend time in their world versus if I'm only checking email occasionally through the day on my laptop, not only is it more efficient, but I immediately see that there's a whole bunch of people vying for my attention. And in that moment, it is much easier to go, you know what? I don't want to talk to any of you guys. Archive, delete. But what we're going to deal with here is a different methodology. Now, if the disruptions happen and the interruptions happen, how do we reduce the amount of time that it takes to get back to work? Because if it takes 6 minutes to get back to work, well, what's going on in that time? And this to me is quite interesting. Number one, could it be that there is a mindset or a state of mind that I need to be in order to do the work, and it takes some time to actually enter into that? Or is it that just finding the stuff that I was working on takes a while? And this could well be one of the significant challenges. Now, there's no doubt that there is a flow state. You've been in it, I've been in it. Time disappears, I'm working away, I'm getting everything done. That is the flow state. And during that, if I am interrupted or disrupted, then there is clearly, for me at least, and probably for you might recognize this, there's a mental disruption. It takes a while to recover out of that flow state, reset, get back into it. That is considerably more than 6 minutes. There's whole books written on this, and one of them is called The Art of Impossible, and it speaks of 4 specific stages that are required in order to enter into this flow state. But there's a precondition, there's the entry, and then there's a recovery. There's one more in there which eludes me, but I believe actually, you know what it is? It's doing a whole bunch of work initially that's not in flow state. Then there's a break experience doing something else, totally unrelated to whatever it is, and then coming back to the work, and it's highly likely that I'll enter into that flow state. And then after that ends, whether it's interrupted and ends or it naturally ends, there's a recovery period. Can't just go straight back in, have to begin back at the beginning. But the time frames on that recovery period and the time frames of the intense work and of the break are much longer than 6 minutes. So the thought is, for me at least, and you can test this out, that it's not entering into a flow state and getting disrupted from it, but rather it's the ability to get back to work. And to do that, I'm going to need a couple of things. One is, well, what was I doing? And this is a challenge unless you're doing one specific thing. Do you know what that specific thing is? Well, it is tracking where you're up to. As you will remember from podcast 34, where we're looking at dopamine release, I was suggesting that we could double our dopamine by tracking both the work that needs to be done and the results of that work, that there was a double dopamine. But how are we doing that? Actually marking off, hey, this item I'm now working on, and this result I'm working on, and now when they're complete, we're marking them done and done. But what I want you to catch is that if I am trained and willing to invest time and effort into making that small move of not started to working on, this also gives me visibility on what I was up to. Both, once again, the step that I was doing, what to do, and the results, the outcome of that work, and I can immediately see it. Now, does there happen where I enter into flow state and I completely forget to track all of the status? Absolutely. But what I've found is that typically the end of that is that when the work's done, I look up and I go, oh, I've done. This doesn't happen all the time. I typically want to be getting that dopamine, moving from status, from not started to working on to done, getting a double dopamine there, going from not started to working on, awesome, and from working on to done, awesome, but also with the result as well. So there's this large benefit from me, even though it takes time. There is a small tracking investment. It is not as fast just to go straight to the work and get it done. But if you are willing to consider that we do live in this disruptive, interruptive environment, then the value of knowing where I'm up to in a particular workflow is significant. And the ability to get disrupted, get interrupted, not ideal, but it happens. And then being able to come back and go, oh, I was working on this and I was working on this, and I can get back into that work much quicker than 6 minutes because I can see what I was up to. I'm like, oh, that's clearly where I was doing, what I was doing. And I was like, okay, great, off we go again. Now there is a second level to this. What about if not only I could see where I was up to, but I could rapidly get back to the file? Now, many of you may run browsers with many tabs. I've seen this before, 20 tabs open, 25 tabs open. It's a lot. I'm like, maybe you should close some of that stuff down. But I believe what's going on here is they're trying to keep track of all of the work that's underway in their minds by leaving all of these browser windows open. Now, have you seen what happens to the computers when you do this? Eventually, they start slowing down. They start chugging. They start like, oh, we're not feeling so great. We've got too much going on. But recognize that this is also highly likely for the human being subconsciously managing 15, 20, 25 tabs at once. Why is this happening? Well, it's happening because they don't have a methodology to find what the work is that they were doing. And they don't have a way of tracking across multiple projects at once. You see, if you track the links and you track the status, and it's a longer term project, something that takes a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it's not something that I want to keep open all the time, but I do want to be able to get back to it quickly. And by immediately putting that link into your project management, or if you're me, into your Magic Board software, then I can find that quickly. And it means that I can close it down and get back to it, whether that is 10 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, or 3 days' time, I'm quickly back to it. I had this exact experience today. I was like, where is my outline for the workshop? Ran a workshop today called Repeatable Success Podcast Magic. I had a Google Doc of the outline, but for whatever reason, I'm like human and I forgot to do it. I forgot to track it. Didn't have it in there. Now, was it a big deal? No, because I've been working on it. I brought it up in the recent, grabbed it, and I put that link into the Magic Board so that I could track it, that I could find it, even though all the work was done. And you might wonder why that would be. Surely the document was already done. The workshop was ready to go. What's going on? Well, you never know when I would need that document again. And as time goes by, it's no longer the top of recent. And then I'm stuck searching for it. And I might well be able to pull up the exact name, but if enough time goes by, it's like, what was that workshop called again? Okay, typing in workshop as the search term, and now all of the workshops that I've run show up, as well as all of the workshops I've attended show up. I can't find the file. But if I can find the board I'm like, okay, show me all of the fulfillment boards, and I can go through and I can search workshop. Now I'm in a much reduced data set. Why? Well, I'm only dealing with my workshops that I've produced, not all of the workshops that I've attended that have ended up in my Google Drive or my Evernote or whatever it is. But tracking both the status and the link allows me to have a significant ability to get back to work. And this means that I'm doing productive work. I'm moving my projects forward. I'm putting in whatever that time is, whether it's 10 minutes, whether it's 15 minutes, whether it's 2.5 hours. But this project progresses. There's work being done on the right file. And when I get interrupted and disrupted, guess what? I can find where I was up to. I can see that I was working on that step. I can rapidly recalibrate my mind to go, that's right, we were doing this. I can click the link, it opens the file, and I'm back to work. Literally in under 5 seconds instead of 6 minutes. This is significant. This should be setting off warnings to say, hey, I can get my team to do more if we implement this. Remember, there is a cost. What's the cost? The cost is that you've got to be willing to track starting and completing work, and you've got to be willing to track links. Is it a difficulty? No. Is it a habit? Yes. Does it occasionally get forgotten? Yes. Is that a big deal? No. But the overall benefits for you to be able to get back to work are very, very high. This also enables other team members to see what's going on. I can see that Tom's working on this right now, and I can open up and check where we're up to because the link's there. We begin to move out of a hidden workplace, one where everything is blinded and we can't see what's going on, to one where we can see what's going on, we can track progress, and all of us in the team can adapt to optimize for getting things done. If I can see that my compadre is working on a file and it's estimate, I'm going, hey, how long you reckon? He's like 4 hours. Okay, cool. I can watch. I can go do other work. But let's say he gets interrupted. Let's say something else comes up. I can still see that he's working on, or perhaps even it's been paused. He's like, you know what? I just need to pause this. And then strategic decisions can be made about, hey, well, I've got downtime. Maybe I can pick that up. Is that work I can do? Yes or no? If it's not, then I can leave it there and I can adapt. I can see what the impacts are of the work getting done, the work being paused, the work that's not getting done. And we can strategically make decisions about what needs to happen in order to get things done. There's significant benefits when your team will commit to tracking the status of what they're doing and tracking the links of what they're working on. We live in a digital world where a lot of links now can be put in, whether it's a design file like a Figma and you just grab that link and drop it in, immediately you're into the right place in that Figma file, whether it's a Google Doc, whether it is a Zoom link, whether it is whatever the particular work is, that we can rapidly get back to work. We can find the right things, we can see where we're going and get the work done, even in a highly disruptive and interruptive experience that most of us are living in. Whether the work's at home, whether the work's at the workplace, there is going to be interruptions. My wife was saying this. She's like, you know what? I go to work and people start talking to me and I can't get anything done. That is an interruption. That is a problem. She's getting more done at home, but home's got its own challenges, but there is not the people that are continually chatting, and therefore either she needs to get headphones and block it out, or work from another location, go to a private office, get the work done. But these are challenges that we are facing. Now, what's the best way to do this? Well, it means committing to actually setting up and saying, you know what, we're going to track the important things in our workplace. Much of the work not only is hidden, it's also not tracked as repeatable. So the same work's getting done every week, every month, every 2 weeks, every quarter. But each time we come to do it, it has to be done again. This is both a benefit that commonly repeating work, stuff that happens every week, can be learnt. Humans, we're really good at this. We'll get better at it. And so the cost of tracking might not be seen to be very beneficial. But I'd encourage you that even on something that's happening very weekly, that if we do these behaviors of tracking status and tracking links, that if something happens to a human being, a la sickness, a la going on holiday, or potentially even quitting or getting headhunted, we know where they were up to, even on that work that's getting done every week. Let alone if we're dealing with work that gets done less frequently. If you do not have a template for the workflow that is being done every month, it is very easy to skip steps, do steps in the wrong order, and the wrong work gets done. And you're like, hang on, we missed this step again. I told you last month. I told you. But the problem is not with the person. The problem is with the visibility of the work. Make that work visible by setting it up on a template that we copy each month, and suddenly the person knows what to do. They're reminded. They're like, okay, that's right. The next step is this. The next step is this. The next step is this. And they can make decisions and say, you know what? That's not appropriate. I'm going to skip it. Mark that one skip. Oh, actually, this month we need something extra. Add it in. It's not a rigid set in stone prescription, but it is the ability to make sure that the right work is getting done each month or week or quarter or on demand. Something happens. But your ability to do this is going to be very much based on the template that you choose to have for your work in your business. How do you guys track work? How do you set it up? There's many ways, but how many work is a whole different kettle of fish. The one that I found, well, it's of course the magic board, where we're tracking both the SOPs or the instructions or the steps or the processes or whatever you want to call them. Here's what to do, and on the same page, what those steps produce. So I can see what to do and what I'm producing very easily, and we constrain that design just to say, hey, every single magic board is going to have the steps at the top and the results at the bottom, no matter what it's for. Then we've got this ability to track links, which we've already discussed, and track status. Where are we up to? So that we can get back to work. We can get to work when we run a board and it's like, great, I can do this, and this. I know who's responsible. I know what we're trying to produce. And then when we get interrupted, when we get disrupted, I can see where I was up to and I can get back to it quickly. If you want some help around this, head over to www.magicboards.io. We have software, we have consulting in order to get you up and running, get your teams functional, and overcome the difficulties that come from a business that's growing and adds more people, and suddenly everything starts breaking. Hope you've enjoyed today's episode. I certainly enjoyed making it for you. If you want to head out and reach out to me, then head over to www.magicboards.io. Love to hear from you. Thanks for joining into this episode of The Visible Workplace, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. See you then.
Thanks for tuning into the Visible Workplace podcast. Subscribe for more productivity tips and share with friends. We love your feedback, so please rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. For more tips and tools, visit www.magicboards.io. Thanks again, and see you next episode. Disclaimer: the information and ideas discussed in this episode are general in nature and do not take into account your specific circumstances. You should seek specialist advice for any medical, financial, emotional, mental, or other difficulties that you are facing with appropriate specialists and professionals so that they can apply your specific circumstances and give you the required advice.